Hi, and welcome to another video on object-oriented programming in C#. With me, Marinas Toman. Okay, so now we're going to look at debugging an app console. So the debugger is a really good tool for you to be looking at using, especially when you're starting to build classes and libraries full of classes. You have to debug your code to make sure that it works as expected. And of course, as it says, you want to get rid of the bugs. You want to debug it. Okay, so debug and release are Visual Studio's built-in build commands or configurations. You use the debug build configuration for debugging and the release configuration for the final release distribution. So we won't really be looking at releasing any of our code in this module, but just remember that everything that we do in our debug version, in terms of testing, we have to do as well with the release version. So in the debug configuration, a program compiles with full symbolic debug information and no optimization. Optimization complicates debugging because the relationship between the source code and generated instructions is usually more complex. The release configuration has no symbolic debug information and is fully optimized, so that's really the differences in them. So that's why we need to test both the debug version and the release version. Okay, so you should start Visual Studio and open this project that we created in the last video, just the simple Hello World application. Next, we want to set a breakpoint, and a breakpoint is just it temporarily interrupts the execution of the application just before the line that it's set on. So if I set my breakpoint here on line 10, it's going to stop the program's execution just before this is executed, before this line is executed. So in this example, we would be able to check what is in the name variable, what is in the current date variable, things like that. So once we set a breakpoint, in this instance we'd set it on line 10. You just do that by clicking in the left margin here, and you'll see the little red dot once the break line's set, and it'll be highlighted in red as well. So the left margin is just to the left of the line numbers. Other ways to set a breakpoint are by placing a cursor on the line of code and pressing F9, or else you can do it from the debug menu up here. So what we're going to do now is debug in debug mode. So there's a couple of different ways you can do this. You can press F5 to run the program, or you can do it from this menu here. I'd just like to use the shortcut here, so we'll use that. Okay, so enter a string in the console when the program prompts for a name, and then press enter. So we'll just do the same as before. Mark, hit enter, and now you can see in the background here that the execution is stopped. Okay, so we have a couple of windows down here that shows us some information. One of them is this locals window, and the other is the call stack exception settings, or the immediate window as it's known as. Okay, so we can see some things like what's the value inside these variables. So you can see the arguments array that's coming in, the string array that's coming in has 0 in it, 0 arguments. So let's continue on with the tutorial. So the program execution stops when it reaches the breakpoint before the console.writeLine method executes. So this line hasn't actually executed yet. The locals window displays the values of variables that are defined and are currently executing. So the immediate window, what is that? So this lets you interact with the application while you're debugging. So in this example now, I could change the value of variables to see how it affects the program. So in the immediate window, we're just going to type in name equals, and start double quotes, Gracie, enter double quotes, and then we just hit enter. So you can see over here that the name variable, even though I have put in Mark from the console, the immediate window has went in and changed that variable name. So you can see we could do the same with the date time value. So if we continue to continue the execution of the program, you can do that, of course, by clicking on the debug button again. And once it's finished, you can see that it's now hello Gracie at whatever time. So the data was changed from Mark to Gracie. Okay, we'll just close that. These breakpoints can also be conditional. So the program displays a string that the user enters, but what happens if the user doesn't enter anything? You can test this as a useful debugging feature called conditional breakpoint. So if we right click on the breakpoint and we click on conditions, what we see is this conditions window opening. Okay, so you can see here that it's a conditional expression and we're going to evaluate, is this true? So for the conditional expression, we can enter the following code, which checks basically if a string is empty or not. So do that. String is null or empty. Do that for the name variable. Okay, so each time the breakpoint is hit, the debugger calls this method here, checks if it is null or empty, and breaks on this line only if the method returns true. Okay, so if that is not null, then it's not going to stop the program executing. Okay, so we just hit close and start the program debugging. So now whenever we put in the data, we just hit enter, put in nothing, and you can see that it's updated and it has stopped the program execution, and it's showing that there is nothing in the name variable now. So yeah, we can see this in the locals window, and then you can confirm the value is empty by entering the following statement in the immediate window. So question mark name. Empty. You can see that this is actually true, so there is nothing in the name. So we can stop debugging here with this stop button, or you can just work your way through and continue debugging if you want. Okay, so in this tutorial, the final part is to step through a program. Okay, so basically what the tutorial gets you to do here is put your break line at the very start of the program, and then work your way, step your way through each line, stepping into and out of the classes like console and so on. So I'm going to leave that for an exercise for you to do yourself. And of course, as always, I'll show you where to get I'll give you the link where to get this tutorial online, and then whenever you're following it online, you can copy the snippets of code and everything yourself. Okay, thank you. Okay, so that's everything for the video. Thanks for watching.